want to just share with you a couple of messages that you will be able to listen to. And then on Sundays, we're going to have special sermons and music for you to enjoy as well. So make sure that you connect with us through those stations and those channels so that you don't miss anything. One of the things that I have found in my life, as well as the life of other people who are disciples of Jesus or people who are exploring the Christian faith, is something that you and we really don't like to talk about. And that is the sense or the feeling that we are not adequate. Perhaps we carry around some shame or some fear of what people might find out about us, and it is something that is universal, that most people have at least one thing that they look back on their life and they say, I wish I hadn't done that. That was a mistake that I made. That was a problem that I had, and I don't really know what to do with that. And in the book of Leviticus, oddly enough, there is an entire chapter devoted to the question of how would we be free of shame or guilt or embarrassment about what we have done or perhaps what we haven't done. And it's a very special section in that it carries a message about how do we overcome those feelings or that knowledge that we have made a mess of our lives or that we have made a mistake, and so that we can be more connected with God, and because of that connection with God, we'll be able to connect better with others and have a freedom and a sense that all of that has been resolved and taken care of. And in the book of Leviticus, the chapter that I'm talking about is in chapter 16. And you can take a moment to look that up. But in chapter 16, there's this expansive, detailed ritual that takes place. And it's mostly the action of the person who they call the high priest. In this particular case in Leviticus, it's a man named Aaron. And in Leviticus, Moses, Aaron's friend and brother, he gives instruction to Aaron and says, this is what you need to do for the people. And Aaron goes through this elaborate ritual where he bathes and he gets clean. He cleanses his body, he washes his hands, his hair, everything, and then he puts on clean clothes, white linen clothes, to show that he has been made pure and that he has been kept clean. And then he puts on the turban, his hat, and he goes through an elaborate ritual, part of which is that he offers sacrifice for his sins. He offers sacrifice to make up for the mistakes that his family has made. And then he offers another sacrifice for the people. And when the whole ritual is reviewed and looked through, it would have been rather lengthy and elaborate. And people would have been able to see Aaron go about this work. And at the end of it, they would have known that God had forgiven their sins and that God would have been the one who has assured them that they are a people who are now forgiven, and they don't need to be ashamed or embarrassed or worried about anyone holding that against them. The mistakes of their past would have been gone, and they would have been at peace with God, at one with God. The big word here is atoned, at one with God. And when we look at that detailed ritual, you can begin to see why it would have given them peace. Because physically, they would have washed away any dirt or grime on their lives. And then they would have been clothed in clean garments. They would have felt pure in that way. And then to cap it all off, they now have a faithful way of looking at their lives in the assurance that God had forgiven them and atoned for their sins. Now, it was a ritual that carried on for generation after generation, and you can find other passages where the priest is doing his job. There is one place in the Bible where we get a glimpse of why this was so important and why it was so meaningful for people. In the 3rd chapter of Zechariah, there's another high priest named Joshua. And Zechariah is given a vision, an image of what might be. And in it, Joshua, who's different from the book of Joshua, he's a high priest. And in this vision, the high priest Joshua is about to go through the entire ritual. And things are not right. Because he was supposed to give sacrifice, he was supposed to be dressed in a white robe and clean linen robe, and he was supposed to be cared for. And yet when Zechariah is given this vision in chapter 3, they see that this high priest, Joshua, his robes are filthy. They're dirty, they're soiled. And it says that there's an accuser there who's saying that the ritual can't be done, that the sins can't be forgiven, that the whole process just isn't going to work. I think there's times in our lives where we feel the same way, where we look at the rituals that our church offers, or we look at the recommendations that other people have made about our faith, and we ask ourselves the questions of, can anything that's dirty or broken or ruined or troubled find that kind of peace that we long for and that we hope for, that close connection that we desire? Or are we just going to continue to be accused and ridiculed by our accusers and others? But there's this amazing passage that happens in the Gospel of Matthew. And in Matthew chapter 17, there's this event that is just spectacular. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and the other Gospels, they ask these questions that we've been talking about over and over again. They ask questions like, how could our lives be set right? How could our hearts be made pure? And who is Jesus? Why does he matter? And how could he possibly make things different? And in Matthew chapter 17, there's what we call the Transfiguration. And it's a big word that we put into it that basically means that there was a time where Jesus was with his disciples, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, without cause or without reason, Jesus becomes dazzling white. His robes are white, his face is shining like the sun, and the people that are gathered there, his disciples, are amazed. And a voice out of heaven says, "This is my Son, whom I love and whom I'm well pleased." And it's this way in which Matthew and Jesus and you and I are all told, here's the one who can make things pure. Here's the one who can set things right. Here is somebody who is greater than a high priest, who doesn't need all the rituals or all the formality, but rather who can speak into our lives, touch our hearts, and make us pure. And so today, I just encourage you to search your heart, to look within the depths of who you are, and find those places where maybe you are ashamed, or perhaps you are carrying around some guilt. And just to know that I and countless other Christians believe that Jesus is able to heal those places in our lives to cleanse us, make us whole, and set us on a path that leads to life and a life that's close to God. He is the one who can atone, who can bring together and redeem and heal our hearts and our lives. Amen. Hope this message helps you. Once again, take a minute to like or to subscribe to our channel. Remember that you can still contribute to Wesley Methodist Church online. If you'd like to give a financial gift, the easiest way to do that is to go to our website and follow the links. Thank you.